Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, welcome to the second day of the 2025 Budapest Global Dialogue. It's great to see you all here again, both in person and online, for another exciting day. As we heard yesterday, the 2025 Budapest Global Dialogue, co-organized by the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs and the Observer Research Foundation, convenes global policymakers, thought leaders, and experts to address the dynamics of an increasingly multipolar world. The 2025 dialogue focuses on the key themes shaping today's international landscape, including the redefinition of transatlantic relations, the revival of national sovereignty, the emergence of new economic compacts, and much more. Today's program begins with a VIP keynote address by a very special guest, Péter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary. Minister Szijjártó has been a Fidesz Member of Parliament since 2002, having begun his sixth term in 2022. He also served as Communications Director of the Fidesz Party from 2006 to 2010, as the Prime Minister's spokesperson from 2010 to 2012, and then as State Secretary for Foreign Affairs and External Economic Relations in the Prime Minister's office until 2014. After serving a brief stint as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, he was named Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade later that same year, a position he has held ever since, guiding Hungarian foreign policy through a decade of significant global transformation. We are incredibly fortunate to have him here with us today to share his insights on the complex dynamics shaping our world today. Please welcome Péter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, to the stage to give his keynote.
Good morning to all of you. Dear Gladden, thank you so much for the very kind invitation. Thank you so much for the very kind words, well above merits and full of exaggeration, but it feels good. I would like to also wholeheartedly welcome my dear brother from the Republic of North Macedonia, dear Timčo. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation of the Hungarian Foreign Affairs Institute, and thank you so much for coming to Budapest and address us. Your thoughts will be very valuable under the current circumstances. I'm pretty sure about that. So for the last 15 years, unfortunately, we have been faced with a tremendous set of crises. These crises have shaken the world one by one as well. And on many occasions, we have basically announced a new world order without any kind of exaggeration. In, let's say, other periods of time, such an announcement comes with a good reason once or twice in a century. In this case, it was not an exaggeration to announce a new world order on a multiple occasion only within 15 years. There have been many events which have turned our way of thinking about the world itself upside down. We should just remember the crisis of the global crisis of the financial sector, which has totally shaken the national financial and economic political strategies. Let's remember when we have been invaded by hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants around 10 years ago, with the phenomenon which has increased the significance of the fight for sovereignty and preserving our own identity. Then I'm pretty sure that no one has forgotten about the global crisis of the healthcare sector in the form of the pandemic, which made it very clear that regardless of the very highly developed technology, regardless of the very artificial intelligence, nothing is given, and we have to fight for our lives with human resources instead of technology on many occasions. And then unfortunately, we are now living in a year of wars. The war in our neighborhood in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East, two phenomena which have made it very clear that the expression global security does not exist anymore. And my dear friends, I can tell you that the announcement that a new world order is being established is valid on the very day today as well. And this new world order is being established on two bases. First, the revolution of common sense has been going on. And the second, that the European Union is getting isolated and lagging behind under the current circumstances. So let me emphasize these two aspects of the New World Order being established. When it comes to the revolution of common sense, this is now stemming from the #1 superpower of the world. As a patriotic president has been elected, the patriotic conservative way of thinking in global politics has been on the rise. And that was the right time, finally, because the world used to be suffering under the global dictatorship of the liberal mainstream, which has been saying about itself that it is the only and exclusive way of being successful, tolerant, progressive, acceptable. And whoever does not fall in line 110% with this approach has been under tremendous attacks, has been target of accusation, cornering, and lecturing. But now, with the new president in the United States, the age of normality, the age of common sense is coming back, and what has been considered so far as extreme is now becoming the mainstream. So we are coming back to the main street of history finally. What are the practical aspects of that? First of all, words and expressions like peace talks, like ceasefire, are now legitimate expressions again. Because imagine, or just remember, the last 3 years after the war in our neighborhood had broken out, whoever used these terms were immediately stigmatized. Friends of Putin, spy of the Russians, propagandist of the Kremlin. Funnily enough, nowadays, those Western European politicians are using these words on a high frequency who used to attack us for using these words and arguing for these goals for the last 3 years. What a hypocrisy. Second practical aspect, protecting the border is finally a legitimate way of thinking and a legitimate way of acting. Finally, we can leave behind the very hypocritical approach which whispered that the illegal crossing of the border is a human rights issue. No, it's not. Illegal crossing of a border between two peaceful countries is a crime and must be approached accordingly. And third, finally, we are free to say again that a family consists of a mother, father, and children. And finally, it's free to say, and put it in a constitution as well, that a human being can be either a woman or a man. And men compete with men on sporting events, and women compete with women on the sporting events. That's how natural it is, and finally we are coming back to that. This is revolution of common sense. But what about EU getting isolated and lagging behind? What's the reason for that? The reason for that is that the European Union, rather to say the institutions and the bureaucrats in Brussels, are the leaders of the pack when it comes to dividing the world into blocks again. We Hungarians, we Central Europeans, do have a very bad memory of times when the world used to be divided into blocks. We basically had been under the occupation of the communist regime for 40 years. We were oppressed by the East and totally neglected by the West. And we have lost 4 decades of our lives, an entire generation, basically. And if the world is being divided into blocks again, we Central Europeans know what loss it can cause and what tremendous growth opportunities we would lose with that. Unfortunately enough, the European champion of so-called de-risking, the former German Minister of Foreign Affairs, after leaving politics returned, not in Berlin but in New York, and I'm afraid that for the upcoming 1 year the United Nations might lose its capacity and ability to serve as a platform for those even to negotiate who are in a hostile relationship. When she spoke about de-risking, I always raise the question how it comes that the global CEOs of the biggest German companies reach out to me on a weekly basis, asking me to give cash incentive to their Chinese suppliers to be able to come to Hungary, to be as close to the German factories as it is just possible. Look at Hungary. A German factory is being built. What is being built in the neighborhood? A Chinese factory. This is the way the global cooperation works now in global economy, and I don't think that European politics should ruin that. I would even say that yesterday, on the meeting of the energy ministers in Luxembourg, it became very obvious that the industrial cooperation between the Russian and the Western European nuclear industries is stronger than we would have thought. Look at the legal proposal which will be proposed by the European Commission most probably today, what kind of regulations it will contain about nuclear industry, and you will understand. But what is the major and most serious mistake European Union commits? It is the over-politicization and the over-ideologization of the questions of economic nature. And this brings European Union to isolation. Remember the competition among the Western European leaders during the last 8 years, the aim of which was to say the most nasty possible things on President Trump, regardless whether in office or not in office. The problem is that it is not only the Western European politicians who used to take part in this competition who remember what they said on President Trump, but President Trump does remember as well what these Western European politicians have said about him. Second, on China. Back to US. When the patriotic president came to office, we have proposed to the European Commission to immediately cut the tariffs applied by the European Union against the United States industry, because the European Union used to apply 4 times higher tariffs on the American automotive industry compared to the tariffs applied by the US against the European Union automotive industry. We propose immediately to the European Commission to cut to the same level. That would have created a platform based on which successful negotiations could have taken place between the US and the European Union, and a good agreement could have been reached if the European Commission had acted on time. But the European Union has put tariffs on the Chinese electric automotive industry as well. You might remember what was the reasoning. They wanted to protect the European automotive industry. What did the representatives of the European automotive industry say? Please don't do that. Please don't protect us. But what happened? Tariffs had been introduced against the electric automotive industry of China. What happened to the economic relationships to African and Asian countries? European Union proved to be totally unsuccessful in completing negotiations about free trade agreements or investment protection agreements. Why? Because issues which have nothing to do with trade, like LGBT and gender, have been confused with trade issues. And of course, these negotiations have never ended with completed results, neither on FTAs or on investment protection agreements. Sanctions against Russia. Sanctions against Russia has destroyed the growth model of the European economy, looking back the last couple of decades, namely a combination of highly developed Western technologies and easily accessible Russian energy sources. And there's a big hypocrisy in this regard. While we have been attacked by the Western European colleagues for buying openly Russian pipeline gas, the import of Russian LNG has broken record last year. Who were the buyers? The French, the Spanish, and the Belgians. Or the biggest economy of Europe has increased its oil imports from India 11 times, while Russia has increased its oil exports to India like 70 times. Of course, coincidence, no relationship in between the two. But the biggest mistake is the politicization and the ideologization of the energy issues. Because energy is the most physical issue of the world. If there's a pipeline, you can buy energy. If there's no pipeline, you cannot buy energy. Not very sophisticated, but true. And what the European Union has been doing now with the von der Leyen-Zelensky plan is increasing the prices of the energy used by Europe to skies, putting Central European countries like Hungary in a serious situation of dependency on one single route. Yesterday they spoke about sovereignty. Yes, they are violating our sovereignty very badly, because according to the European Union Basic Treaty, putting together national energy mix is a core national competence. With this new von der Leyen-Zelensky plan, they restrict this sovereignty of ours. They spoke about dependency. Yes, they are increasing our dependency as cutting energy sources from us, cutting the second largest gas interconnector and cutting one of the two oil delivery routes. Plus, they are increasing prices to skies of the families, increasing the bills at the end of each month to 2, 3, 4 times. This is the biggest mistake, over-politicization and over-ideologization of things which have nothing to do neither with politics nor with ideology. So the situation of Hungary is a pretty, let's say, exciting one from the perspective of global political science. Because on one hand, we are one of the leaders of the pack when it comes to the revolution of the common sense. But on the other hand, we are part of the European Union, which is getting isolated and lagging behind in global politics and global economy. So what to do? What to do to take out the profit of the positive things and not to be suffering from the negative things? Well, here we need a very smart strategy. And the name of the smart strategy is economic neutrality. And the strategy of economic neutrality has been ensuring that Hungary has been breaking the records of investments flowing to the country and exports flowing out of the country for the last 10 consecutive years, with the exception of 1 year with COVID. We have become the meeting point of the Eastern and Western investors. We are the only country in Europe, besides Germany, and one of the 3 in the world, besides Germany and China, where all 3 top German premium car makers are now having factories. We are now having the second largest capacity of producing electric batteries in the world. We are going to be the 5th European country soon which produces 1 million cars per year. Last year, 31%, the year before, 44% of all Chinese investments targeting Europe have ended up in Hungary. And all this package, all this strategy of economic neutrality has ended up in continued records of FDI inflow and export outflow in and from Hungary. But this is only the economic part. What is the political part? What is the political duty? Now we have to be aware that regardless of the fantastic changes in Washington, the attacks and pressure on us from Brussels is going to grow in the future as well. So we have to double, triple our efforts to preserve our sovereignty. What does it mean? First, we have to make sure that we're going to be left out of the war in our neighborhood in the upcoming period of time as well. The pressure to push us into this war is increasing. We are basically the only ones in Europe, with some friends like the Slovaks, who are supporting, in the European Union, who are supporting the peace plans of President Trump. We are the only ones who have been speaking openly about the need for peace talks and ceasefire for the last more than 3 years. And in the upcoming period of time, we have to make sure that we are not going to be pushed into this war. We have to make sure we're going to be left out. Second, we have to make sure that regardless of the pro-migration policy of Brussels, we're not going to let any single illegal migrant to enter the territory of Hungary from neither directions. No illegal migrants. We will keep the fence there, we will keep the 024 presence of our border guards there, and we make sure that we are the ones who make a decision whom we allow to come into this country, and we are the only ones who make the decision with whom we are ready to live together in this country. And we continue to support our families. 5% of our GDP is now being allocated for family subsidies in next year's budget, about which the Parliament is going to go into vote today. 5% of GDP, highest in the OECD area, supporting our families. We have to avoid that the pressure from Brussels ends up in a puppet government in Hungary. We need a national government, we need a patriotic government, we need a government like the one which has been fighting for national interest for the last more than 15 years. So actually, we have been carrying out, and we have to continue to carry out, a patriotic fight for freedom. And we have to make sure that this patriotic fight for freedom is not only going to be successful in Hungary, but in Europe as well. And as we have been seeing the signals, and as we have been listening to the speeches of CPAC 2 weeks ago, I think we can have some good hopes. But we even can have better hopes, because after myself, you will have the chance to listen to my dear brother and friend, Timčo. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Minister Szijjártó, for sharing your insights. In a few moments, you will have the chance to hear from another foreign minister in the room, Timčo Mucunski, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of North Macedonia. Minister Mucunski is an assistant professor at the St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje, where he teaches courses on Roman law, rhetoric, argumentation models, ethics, and more. Between 2015 and 2017, he served as Deputy Minister for Information Society and Administration. From 2020 to 2021, he was a member of Parliament at the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia until being elected mayor of the Skopje municipality of Aerodrome, a position he held until June 2024, when he was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Please give Minister Timčo Mucunski a warm welcome.
Minister Szijjártó, dear Peter, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you today in Hungary, a nation that, under the leadership of Prime Minister Orbán and Minister Szijjártó, has become a symbol of strategic confidence, renewal, and sovereign innovation at the heart of Europe. I thank our hosts for their warm welcome and for creating a forum where bold thinking is not just allowed, but expected. As someone who lives at the crossroads of diplomacy and academia, I value these moments. We need more spaces where we can speak clearly about Europe, yes, but more importantly, about the kind of future we are prepared to build. The theme of this year's dialogue, Atlantic Rising, Time for Another European Century, poses a timely and urgent challenge. The global order is shifting fast. Old assumptions are falling away. The architecture we inherited is showing its cracks. So if we want to answer that question with honesty, we must begin not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Europe must not aim to preserve the status quo. Europe must aim to lead. For my country, the European project has never been just a destination. It has been our compass as a NATO ally, a committed EU candidate, and a steadfast transatlantic partner. We have placed our faith in the idea that integration is not just surrender, it is strength, that alliances should not be burdens, but rather guarantees of peace and progress. Our NATO accession in 2020 was a milestone, but our EU path remains open-ended, not because of lack of alignment or resolve on our side, but because of uncertainty within the Union itself. So let me be direct. We want to join the European Union, but not a union of indecision or drift. We want to be part of a European Union that acts with purpose, speaks with conviction, and leads with confidence. Throughout this journey, one constant has guided us: our people. The Macedonian people have paid the price of patience and of compromise. But there are lines we will not cross because they define who we are. Our language, our identity, and our cultural and historical continuity are not negotiable. They are the soul of our nation. And while we do remain fully committed to integration, we are equally committed to defending our dignity and our right to be who we are, without condition, without apology, and without erasure. This is not a posture of defiance. It is a posture of self-respect. And any future we build in Europe must rest on mutual recognition and trust, not on the rewriting of history or the imposition of forced narratives. From this foundation, we look outward in a world that is becoming more transactional, more contested, and less forgiving of weakness. Here, sovereignty is not a nostalgic concept. It is the basis for meaningful cooperation. Europe must remain open, but not exposed, cooperative, but not complacent, ambitious, but not detached from the will of its people. The European Union must recommit to subsidiarity. It must defend its diversity of models and empower nations to govern in line with the voices of their citizens, especially the often silent but deeply grounded majority who want stability, opportunity, and identity. My nation stands for this vision. We are pro-European but sovereign-minded, open but principled, reformist yet rooted in tradition. And while Europe recalibrates, one enduring truth does remain. The transatlantic alliance is still one of the greatest constants of our age. And constancy in times of uncertainty is power. We applaud the Trump administration for its diplomacy anchored in values and peace, especially in regions such as ours, where tensions linger and choices do matter. This is not just a sentiment, it is history. Without transatlantic resolve, the Western Balkans would not have moved from conflict to stability. Without American and European unity, we would not have turned from past to future. Now, as the US rebalances towards new frontiers, from the Indo-Pacific to the Middle East to emerging technological domains, Europe must do more than just adjust. It must step up. A stronger Europe, strategically minded, globally respected, is not a counterweight to the United States of America. It is its natural partner. For the European project to remain meaningful, it must rediscover its purpose, not through top-down uniformity, but through bottom-up unity. Internally, it must value diversity not as a liability, but as a strength. Externally, it must put enlargement back at the heart of its mission. My country, fully aligned with the EU CFSP, surrounded by EU members and a contributor to regional peace, remains in the waiting room, not because of merit, but because of politics. This is not just disappointing, it is strategically short-sighted. The Western Balkans is not Europe's backyard. We are Europe's foundation, and Europe's ability to act decisively in our region will be the measure of its geopolitical maturity. Europe's prosperity has long rested on openness and trade. But in today's environment, interdependence can be used as a leverage and, at times, even as a weapon. For my country, where over 70% of the trade flows to the European Union, this is not theoretical, it is real. We welcome, for example, the growth plan for the Western Balkans. We are ready to deepen integration with the single market. But let's be honest, market access is not enough. What Europe truly needs is strategic resilience. This means investing not only in roads and grids, but in research, in talent, in secure supply chains, and critical technologies. AI, quantum, green energy, these are no longer luxuries. They are the battlegrounds of tomorrow's economy. And here too, the Western Balkans must not be treated as a peripheral consumer. We are ready to contribute and be builders to Europe's next industrial era. So let me return to the question. Is this the time for another European century? Yes, but only if Europe finds the courage to lead, not just in rhetoric, in results, not just in values spoken, but in values lived, not just in lofty goals, but in real, tangible action. My nation and our region are ready. We are not asking for charity, we are asking for clarity. Enlargement, transatlantic unity, strategic economy, economic resilience, these are not separate tasks. They are one challenge, one mission, one future. If we embrace it together, Europe will not just rise, it will lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Mucunski.